Hi, this is Troy Renck for the Denver Post. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me from wherever you are here on my Broncos podcast. It is a wonderful early weekday, Tuesday. The weather's perfect. It is fall. There is optimism in the air and leaves falling from it. The Broncos are competitive. They're 4-3. Can they handle prosperity? And they have a chance to do some stuff this weekend that puts them in position. We said it again a couple of weeks ago. Puts them in position to compete for a playoff spot. When you look at their schedule, their remaining schedule, and also how the AFC's opened up. Goodbye, Jets. Thanks for coming. No team gets more publicity that is worse than the Jets, other than the Cowboys on occasion, obviously. But the AFC's opening up, and one of the teams the Broncos will be competing against for a spot, Indianapolis, is on their schedule at home. You got a chance to sweep the Raiders this year. Cleveland is just dreadful. They're at home. That looked like before the season a tough game. That will not be. It shouldn't be. So can the Broncos handle prosperity? Can they regain home field advantage to where Mile High used to be, even when their bad years, fall out of bed and win 5-6 games? Broncos, if they can regain home field, if not dominance, just competence, they got a shot, folks. They could get in at 9-8 because of their wins against AFC teams early in the season, including the Jets. And then again, they have Indianapolis on their schedule. They still have a game left against the Chargers. I mean, in so many ways, they control their destiny. And by being good on the road, it's giving them a chance to create a little damage here. Now, again, November's the key, kind of surviving November. That Atlanta game could be a swing game in terms of a winning record and playoff berth when you look at it, because after Carolina this week, you'll go to Baltimore, to Kansas City, and then you have Atlanta. It's a huge stretch. You got to survive the stretch. If you go 2-2 in those 4 games, you should be okay. Should be okay. But you can't turn a bad night at Baltimore into a gruesome game at Kansas City and then come home and lose to Atlanta. So a lot is in front of the Broncos. Their defense has put them in position to contend for a playoff berth, which would be their first since 2015. They have a chance here to get right offensively. They have a get-right game. For the last 7-8 years, they have been a get-right game for other teams. Carolina is awful. It's a get-right game for this offense. It's a chance to put your foot down at home where you have not played well this season, whether it was against the Steelers, whether it was against you look at the Chargers game. They played decent against the Raiders, certainly for 3 quarters. But you have a chance now to get back on track against a bad team. Can you handle that prosperity? Can Bo Nix get going in the pocket? Can the team figure out a way to get some production from their tight end? And more specifically, is it time to really start thinking about a trade? Thinking about a trade. The trade deadline is 2 weeks from today, which is Tuesday. Time to start thinking about a trade. We're going to hit all of that here on the Broncos podcast that is provided and presented on the platform of Mile High Sports. We're going to get all of that after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggett Injury Law a call. Their motto with us, it's personal. I've known Darby Hoggett forever. He does great work. I became his good friend. We got to know each other when our boys were playing on the same basketball and baseball teams. Many of his clients become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If the case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work, give Darby's team a call. Tell them Troy sent you. That's 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGET, or visit the website at hoggettlaw.com. Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, and even political props. So head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome back to the Broncos Pod with Troy Renck. I'm your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. It is an interesting time, Broncos fans. This team was picked, 5.5 was the over-under in Vegas. I picked them to go over at 6. They're at 4 now, and they are a heavy favorite, 7-8 point favorite, depending on the book you use, to win this week at Carolina. Against Carolina at home. And it raises the question, can this team handle prosperity? Remember, they need not apologize for their schedule. They've been a bad team, so you play bad teams the following year for the most part. That's the way it lines up. It gives you a chance to regain your footing in the NFL. But this is where the Broncos have a chance to do something they haven't done in a long time. If they get to 5-3 and win this game, when was the last time they were 2 games over at the halfway point? And I'm going to call 8 games the halfway point, understanding it's a 17-game season. But we're not going to go to the second half of next week's game and say that's the halfway point. We're not doing that math. It's an odd number with 17 now. So for argument's sake, we're going the halfway point. When do you think the last time the Broncos were more than at least 2 games over 500 at the halfway point? I'll tell you, it's been a while. And maybe it doesn't surprise you because they haven't had a winning record in 7 years and haven't been to the playoffs in 8. The last time the Broncos were more than 2 games or at least 2 games over 500 at the halfway point, 2016. They were 6-2. That team reached 7-4 after a great win against the Saints and then finished, 2-6, was it, right? 2-5? They just fell off a map. I think they were 7-3 is what it was, and they finished 2-4. That's what it was. Just fell off the face of the earth, lost the game in overtime to the Chiefs. Kind of the whole season just went downhill after that. But 6-2 in 2016 at the halfway point. Have a chance. They beat the Panthers, and by all accounts, they should. The Panthers are coming off a 47 drubbing against the Washington Commanders. The Panthers have been outscored by 133 points through their first 7 games, one of the worst margins in recent memory. They are not good. Andy Dalton had an initial bump as the quarterback, replacing Bryce Young, and then he's, as you might expect, has fallen back to grace with a thud. So he's not the answer. And they lack talent. They're dysfunctional. The owner, knee-jerk reactions, everything. They're as bad as it gets. The Jets are in that conversation because the Jets actually had expectations. But Carolina's in a tough spot because no one really wants to work there because of an impatient owner who thinks he's the GM. And they lack talent. And on offense, they lack offensive weapons. So it's a very winnable game is what we're getting at. Broncos, let's go through this list here. 6-2 in 2016 at the halfway point. In the years since, and why 5-3 would matter so much to this team and give them footing, even with Baltimore and Kansas City on the other side, road games. 3-5 at the halfway point. Let's go. So 17, 3-5. 2018, 3-5. 2016, 2-6. 2020, 3-5. 21, 4-4. 22, 3-5. Last year, 3-5. This year, 5-3. Is that what we're talking about, folks? It would make a huge difference. Because then you can lose at, let me make sure I've got my schedule right up. I've had the wrong year. You can lose at Baltimore. No shame in that. One of the best teams. I picked them to win the Super Bowl. So you can lose at Baltimore, fall to 5-4. You can lose at Kansas City and fall to 5-5. You got to back and beat Atlanta, and then you go to Vegas, and then you have Cleveland at home and Indianapolis. That 4-game stretch is going to decide your season if you're a playoff team and have a winning record. Because you're coming off 2 losses. Hopefully you're relatively healthy because Baltimore, you feel that game for a week because they beat you up physically. They will put their fist in your throat. And Kansas City is a tough game. They're not necessarily a physical team. They are defensively now. But at 5-5, you come back home against Atlanta. Justin Simmons homecoming, Kirk Cousins, day game on Fox. That is a game you got to win. You go to 6-5, then you go to Vegas. Vegas is just absolutely spiraling this year. You sweep Vegas, you go to 7-5. Cleveland is a winnable game, 8-5. Indianapolis is a winning game at 9-5. then you could literally lose out at 9-5, lose out to the Chargers, Bengals, and Kansas City, and you still might get in at 9-8. But if you lose one of those between Atlanta, Vegas, Cleveland, and Indy, now you're going to have to win at the Chargers, at Bengals, or home against KC. KC at home, the last game of the season, might be an easy game if they're sitting everybody, because they could have it clinched by then. The number one seed, they might be competing with the number one seed with Baltimore, but they already beat Baltimore head to head, so they have a game up on them. You could catch a break there in week 18, game 17. So we'll see where that lands. But you can see again where you can get to 9 wins pretty quickly after you play the Ravens and Chiefs. All those are Atlanta, you probably will be favored. Vegas, you'll be favored, even though you never won there. Cleveland, you definitely will be favored. Indianapolis at home, you should be favored. You'll be a dog at the Chargers, a dog at the Bengals, and you'd be a dog at Kansas City. But definitely a chance to do some damage. And can you handle prosperity? Again, 5-3 would be your best record if you're the Broncos at the halfway point since 2016. Was the last year it felt like they should have been in the playoffs. They had a chance with Vic Fangio at 7-6, where they lost out and finished 7-10. Vance Joseph one year got 6-6 and lost the final 4 games. Those teams that felt like they were going to have to get a little lucky, for being honest. Even last year, they got hot. They're going to almost have to win out. And then under Peyton, they played a dreadful game at home against the Patriots. And that game knocked them out of the playoffs. But this year, it feels a little different because the defense is so good. That's definitely a playoff defense. And honestly, a defense where you could steal a game in the playoffs, just the way they are playing right now. But if you get to 5-3, what does that look like? And it brings up another point in our headlines, and it speaks back to the bigger headline of this: home sweet home, heating up at home. Can you have that mile-high advantage? So we're talking a lot about the halfway point, and part of that is the intersection of the halfway point and playing at home. When the Broncos have been good, they're good at home. Over the last 8 years, as you might imagine, they've lost that luster at home. They have not been a dominant home. They have an overall losing record at home over the last 8 years. And that's a reflection of being a bad team. But again, if you know Broncos history, even when they've been bad, they've been competent to good at home. And that's what's been so discouraging is mile high. When you look at the history of good teams in Colorado sports history, whether it's the Avs, the Nuggets, the Rockies, or the Broncos, they almost always dominated home in years they're good. Not every year, but most recently with the Nuggets and Avs, certainly. The Rockies in 2007, the year, even 17 and 18, when they went back-to-back playoffs for the only time in franchise history. Those teams are good at home. Look at these home records for the Broncos since 16. They've only had a winning record 3 times in these last 8 years. 5-3 in 2016, 5-3 in 2019, and 5-4 last year. You got to be better. I mean, and they've already got off to a bad start this year because you lose just an unspeakably bad offensive game to the Steelers at home, and then you turn around and lose. You beat the Raiders 34-18, a bad first quarter, but you beat the Raiders, and then a just unspeakably bad game against the Chargers at home offensively, 23-16, where you were down, getting shut out with 10 minutes left in the game. So when you look at your home averages in 2 of your 3 home games, you had 16 points and 6 points. So you averaged 11. The 34 number brings it up. But again, it was a little bit of an anomaly because you had a pick 6. So offensively, you did not have 34 points. You only had, 26 points of those, 27 points of those. You've got to be better at home offensively and allow that crowd to get into it so they creates problems on third down for the opposition. But this year, they need to finish with a winning record at home. And you look at the remaining home games, and you can do it. So you're 1-2 now. Should be 2-1, you're not. You've won 3 straight road games. That's the reason you're in it. You've won 3 straight road games since the first time since 2015. That's why you're in this. And that's why I tell you need not apologize ever if you're the Broncos for winning on the road. The Jets win. that sent them into a spiral. It was a big win. Tampa Bay is a decent team. You saw them last night against the Ravens. They're an especially good offensive team at times, and the Broncos held them to 7 points. That's their most impressive win of the season so far. The Saints, you just took care of business. But you're 1-2. You got Carolina at home. That needs to be a win. Atlanta at home. That needs to be a win. Cleveland at home. Win. Colts at home. And then Chiefs. I mean, you could win out at home, but you definitely have to think in terms of maybe only one more home loss. That Atlanta game just continues to kind of surface as an important game. Because if the Chiefs are playing for the 1 seed, maybe they beat you. But no excuses against Atlanta. The Chiefs are undefeated. They're the reigning champs. We get it. We get everything about the Chiefs. There's no shame in losing to the Chiefs. And you beat them last year at home, but there's no shame in losing to them. Cleveland is mailing it in. You got to beat Cleveland. You got to beat Cleveland. And again, when you look at it, there just hasn't been the success at home you need. And last year, 5-4, you got to have a winning record at home. Think in terms of winning out. Could you do that? I doubt it, but you got to have a winning record at home if you're the Broncos, if you're thinking about being a playoff team. And it starts this week against the just absolutely dog water Panthers. No excuses. Nobody wants to hear them. Everything's good. You had a half bye week, if you will. So the mile high advantage needs to return. The fans are into it. I mean, I give them credit. That Chargers game, you wanted to poke your eyeballs out with a rusty fork. I mean, through 50 minutes of that game. Most of the fans stayed, and they were into it. When the Broncos made, I mean, it was a hollow calories, empty calories comeback. They made a comeback. They made a comeback, and the fans were into it. So that was encouraging that you need that mile-high advantage. How do you get that offensively? Because, again, 2 of the 3 games you've been bad. Well, I was asked on Mile High Sports by Eric Goodman and Bruce Hurdle on their morning show. Love going on. I'm on every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:15. About do we need style points this week from Bo in the offense? And it's not style points, folks. What you need from Bo is just improvement in the pocket. I wrote over the weekend, it's like the idea Bo can't throw. I mean, give me a break. I mean, they've won 3 straight road games. Give the kid a little patience. Give him a little grace here. It may not get better. I don't know that he's the guy. But I know that I don't know after 7 games where he's finding a way to win, and they've won 3 straight road games, and he's on pace for 615 yards rushing and 12 rushing touchdowns. That'd be the second most rushing yards and the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. That's a weapon. That's not something to discourage. You can incorporate that into his game, as they do with Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. But you have to throw from the pocket. Bo's got to improve his footwork. So what am I watching for Bo this week? Improvement in the pocket. And that means not hopping with his feet, getting his feet set, getting his shoulder pointed, drive the football, climb the pocket, and drive the football. If you do naked boots and you get outside, once you get out there, you're clear of the defender, set your feet, get that arm slot right, and let it ride. We don't need bouncing feet, sidearm throw when there's no one around you. That throw has a purpose. When somebody's in your face or you're trying to get around a defender, 100%. I love it. Like an infielder turning a double play. But when no one's out there, set your feet. Mechanically be sound. And that's what they need to see is developing consistency with his footwork. Part of that is knowing what he's seen. I get that. Your footwork improves when you know what you see because you see, it clicks, you set your feet, go. Some of this is just experience. Knowing what he's seen, and as he knows what he sees, improve his footwork. And part of that is continuing to spoon him. Get him out of the pocket. Get those RPOs. Give him those chances to get naked bootlegs, one-side reads. Get the footwork going and then bring him back into the pocket more and more. He's going to have to win from the pocket. You're not going to win, and Lamar Jackson suffered through this. You're not going to win just running the football as a quarterback. But let's not pretend there's not positive signs because there are. And I would not make a decision on Bo Nix's future until next Thanksgiving, whether he's a franchise guy. But improve him from the pocket. I'm not worried about style points, folks. Just improvement. Improvement. And one encouraging thing to keep an eye on, That connection with Troy Franklin's emerging. I keep telling you he's got number one receiver traits. I would still go get a guy in the offseason or draft a guy. One of the latest mock drafts I saw had the Broncos taking the kid from Arizona, their wideout. They're going to have to get another receiver. I would prefer it be a legitimate number one like a T. Higgins, but Troy Franklin is encouraging what he's doing. Cortland Sutton didn't have a catch last week, wasn't involved in the pass game, and they still were fine. And that's telling you again, Sutton's a 2, folks. He's not a 1. Franklin's not a true 1, but he has 1 characteristics with his ability to win off the line of scrimmage and his top end speed. But our final thing about this is if we're going to do a fair evaluation of Bo and they win this game and they go to 5-3, you got to go get him a weapon. You got to go get him a weapon. And I've pitched the idea that you go get T. Higgins. T. Higgins is probably not going to be available. The Bengals, not surprisingly, are getting hot. Their schedule's getting easier. Probably not going to trade him. Obviously, if they think they're going to get to the playoffs, they're not going to trade T. Higgins. I would make a run for him in the offseason, again, because of his age, him only being 26 years old. You pay him 4-year deal. You're paying him through his prime, 26, 27, 28, 29. That's when you want to be paying a guy, not when he's 30, 31, 32. You're paying him in his prime years to be a 1. You might not be able to get a receiver. Now, Mike Williams is going to be available. Mike Williams does nothing for me. Now, again, if Broncos want to make a run for him, I can't imagine there's much market for him. He's hurt all the time, folks. I mean, I know we saw him with the Chargers. He has real ability. He's never healthy consistently. He's a guy that disappoints you because he's never healthy and he's just wildly inconsistent. I'm not interested in Mike Williams personally. I just think he's too much like Sutton. I'd rather see Devon Vele get those reps. DeAndre Hopkins, he looks done. He's an older player. We talked about Amari Cooper before. Again, Cooper's a rental for a championship team, not really this team. That's why, again, I go back to Higgins. But if you look at the other position they need, that's tight end. Folks, the tight end production for the Broncos is so embarrassing right now. Right now in the league, the Raiders lead with 58 catches from their tight ends. Brock Bowers is the real deal. Mayer from Notre Dame, real deal. And the Ravens have 563 yards from their tight ends, with Likely and Mark Andrews absolutely huge, a huge game last night against the Bucs. And then early in the season, it was Likely who was getting all those. If you're going to have a running type quarterback with like Bo Nix is, I mean, you look at what they're doing with Lamar Jackson, and if you're going to be doing those RPOs and those kind of quick hitters, you absolutely 100% have to have a tight end. And right now, the Broncos are at the bottom in tight end production. Lucas Kroll leads them with 6 catches. They in total from all their tight ends, which is Kroll, Dulcich, Troutman, Atkins, 17 catches, 136 yards. That's a joke. I mean, it really is. And it was just like that last year as well. They've got to get more from their tight ends. So what could be the answer? What about David Njoku from Cleveland? What about Hooper from the Patriots? You've got to be thinking about going to get a tight end. If you're 5-3, at that point, you have one more game before the deadline. It's not going to cost you much. Who cares if you give up a 6th or 7th round pick? Every once in a while, that pick is Jonathan Cooper. For the most part, the 6th and 7th rounders play special teams. They never morph into starters. You need somebody that can help you offensively, and specifically Bo Nix and his development. So in absence of a receiver, which would be my choice, you got to look at tight end. You got to look at tight end. Cleveland, to look, by all intents and purposes. Now they're going to get better with Deshaun Watson not playing. It's the best thing. I'm not that he's hurt. I'm not rooting ever for even someone with his issues who, frankly, probably shouldn't be in the NFL right now. I'd never root for anyone to get hurt. But they'll be a better team without him. Maybe. I thought they were going to start Jameis Winston. It sounds like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He is a project. You talk about raw. He is a raw project. He looked so bad against the Broncos last year. But they're not going to win anything this year. They're done. So can you go get Njoku from them? Can you get Austin Hooper from the Patriots? Go look, explore that market, see what's available, but it has to be a pass-catching tight end. someone that's going to be effective. And I don't want to, oh, he's a blocker, but in our scheme, he's going to catch. No. We saw that with Manhurts. We're not projecting a blocking tight end to be a pass catching tight end. It's somebody that has a history of catching the football. Because if Bo's going to run, you watch what they do with Jackson when he gets that RPO, that quick hitter where he basically just fakes the stand straight up. There's the tight end sitting there at like 7 yards. He's like running a go route. He just stops, sits right there in the zone. Boom, you hit him. That's the guy they need. Someone to get off the line of scrimmage, someone that can catch, someone that might actually get a few yards after the catch. Because they don't have that right now. They don't. Kroll's an interesting project. Dulcich, it's over. It's over. He's probably played his last snap here, barring injury. Kroll is a project. I like Kroll, but it's just too much right now to ask him to do this if you're trying to get into the playoffs. He can be a backup. He can be sometimes inactive, sometimes not. I want to go get a tight end to help Bo Nix, to be fair to Bo Nix. And for me, Njoku from Cleveland could be that guy. Regardless, in the offseason, it's very clear that they're going to have to get a receiver and a tight end. There's just no way they're going to get where they want to go and develop Bo Nix the way they want to develop it without more weapons around it. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. So you talk about this team where they are, 4-3. You got Carolina coming up. This is where you've got to start thinking in terms of handling prosperity, getting to 5-3, and reasserting that home field advantage. You've got to get Bo in the pocket. Forget style points. Let's just see him slowly improve in the pocket. It's his footwork, and that comes from his processing. You work from the ground up. And as your mind moves faster and processes better, your feet gets more stable. Can we see improvement in that area? And some of it is related to play calling. Continue to spoon feed him. And high and tight, go get a tight end in absence of a receiver. Go get a tight end to be fair to his development. It's a good time to be a Broncos fan. You guys deserve it, Broncos country. It has been a long 7-8 years. This is a team that has a chance to contend, to hang around. This next month, because Sean Payton dominates October. You win here, but then you got Baltimore, then you got the Chiefs, but you still have a chance, folks. That Atlanta game on that backside could be the game the season spins on in terms of winning at home, winning record at home, and also getting you some momentum as you go into that final stretch of the season. Folks, I could not do this pod if it weren't for Darby Hoggett at Hoggett Injury Law. Bet Online, a new sponsor. They've been great. And, of course, Nate Lundy and a big A behind the glass from Mile High Sports. They make this pod possible. They are the best. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness, that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.